YouTube? Welcome back to UniXTCG, and today I am doing a definitive tier list for the United States Nationals for One Piece in terms of viability. I think that we have enough data from other national events as well as everybody's testing to go into this. It's going to be short, simple, sweet, but it is my first tier list on this channel. For you guys wondering why I'm not competing in US Nationals when I said I was going to, it's because I will be commentating at Cardfest for Battle Spirits Saga. Once I got that call, kind of had to change up my plans and I couldn't really say anything, but that should be up right now, and if it's not, we're allowed to talk about it. So with that being said, I'm going to set a like goal for 150 likes, and then further after that, I guess, tripping over words, you guys can go into the link tree just to see all the different quadrants of Universe X and all the things I'm trying to do here. So let's hop over to that tier list. All right, so here we are at this tier list. We only got a couple of decks here, just about 10, 11, and they're really just the decks I see people trying to either test the most with, or the ones I see people really grinding hard with at locals. And I'm not just saying like every which deck, because then you'd have like King up here. I'm saying like they're just decks that I see consistently doing some things, sometimes even taking the locals. And I have a pretty good locals. It's like a 40-man locals twice a week, so it is what it is. So with that being said, I just want you to see the tiers here. We got a highest top 8 chance. You can still top risky business, sleeve at your own risk, and remember you paid to be here tier. And we're gonna sort these decks into there and talk about why. While you're here, if you like the content by the end of the video, think about hitting that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, join the UniX fam, and yeah, we'll get started. Without saying anything really, we're just gonna have to put Sakazuki right up here. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. The main thing about this guy is consistency. Just with his leader effect alone, discarding a card to draw a card, you're going to see twice as many cards as any other given deck. And that just screams consistency. Between that effect, Branu being able to search most of your good pieces, Rebecca being able to recycle most of your good pieces, Manshuri being able to recycle Rebecca or other good pieces, things like Sabo drawing, you are going to see so many cards that this deck does what it's supposed to do almost the exact same way every single game. And consistency speaks volumes. When you're going through a 9-round tournament, even if it is best of one, especially actually if it's best of one, you want a deck that does the same thing every game, and you want that thing to be, good. And Sakazuki is just a well-oiled machine of removal that makes it really hard for a deck in a game that doesn't have, I guess a game that has summoning sickness, to function correctly. Most things outside of red or the select few cards with rush and other colors have to be played, and then they have to survive a turn in order to deal damage and really push pressure, whereas Sakazuki is going to look at any card without rush and never give them the chance to apply that pressure. So that really is the deck that I'm just going to sit in highest top 8 chance, really. There are a lot of decks here that can high roll, that can low roll, but Sakazuki is just the most consistent, so he's there. The next one, this is the Don Quixote Rosinante deck, and it's going straight to the remember you paid to be here tier. All of the OPO5 decks are here because they are the newest, and I keep seeing people play Rosinante every now and then at like locals, and sometimes they even do well, because if you don't have a lot of Sakazuki on the field and you're seeing a lot of yellow, Rosinante can put up some boards that really do take a Katakuri to like break. And so yeah, it can be there, but at the same time, it is also not there. This deck sees Sakazuki and just gets all of his stuff bottom deck. There's just no way, no how. So we're not going to really explain that one too much. You guys should already know. Green is not in the best place this format. In fact, having green as one of your colors is kind of a detriment. So yeah, it's just going to stay in the remember you paid to be here tier, because LA is not a cheap trip. You guys should already know if you're going. Your flight, your hotel, your expenses while you're out there, it is not a cheap trip. And you did not go to LA. You did not pay for all these things to play Rosinante. Now the next on the list is going to be Purple Luffy, and I'm putting him right at the you can still top tier. Reasons being because when he high rolls, not a lot of things can stand up to that. And there's multiple ways for this deck to high roll. Against yellow, hitting double Magellan on curve is a thing that's going to keep them from playing their Big Moms, their Yamatos, until it's too late. Outside of Katakuri, they can't actually get rid of Magellan without setting off his effect to -2 Mordon. So it can be very, very, very rough to deal with multiple Magellans dropping. But also you have the other rolls where, you know, you might see that page 1 or ulti into page 1. You can get that 7-drop Kid. You can get that 9-drop Kaido. Against yellow, you can feel a lot more comfortable about setting up your Kid blockers, and you snowball into this big, thick field that is hard for them to actually defend themselves from, and you can start sending mad shots their way every turn to fold a Katakuri player, to fold a Enel player. But the thing is, though, it gets handled sufficiently by Sakazuki. So when you're playing into these games, you are really in a space where your matchups matter a lot more. Sakazuki is probably the only deck in the format that consistently not only has like no bad matchups, but consistently performs well against every single matchup. Like a deck that we're going to talk about later has no real bad matchups, but has a lot more variance in how well it plays. So yeah, Luffy is gonna sit here because yeah, if you see 6 Sakazukis, you're probably coming out with a losing record for the day. So that's unfortunate, but you can still get up there. You could high roll a lot of times. It has the tools. Next, we're gonna talk about Zoro. I'm gonna put Zoro actually on the you can still top tier, but I'm gonna put him above Luffy. Why? Because Zoro actually does a lot of cool things in this format. One, he preys on a bunch of these leaders that have 4 life. That's extremely easy for Zoro to build like just pressure in the early game and then just wait until they can swing for 15 or 14 using Diablo Jambe. So that is a huge point of it. Going second, it has some of the most devastating plays in the game when it can play 2 1-drops and then have 2 1-drop boosters to be able to swing for 6-6-7 or 6-7-7, or if you have 2 Sunnies or 2 Buggies, 7-7-7. It's very, very, very strong. And then, like I said, you beat the life out of your opponent, the cards out of their hand, and you just wait for Diablo to come to your hand so you can just swing for alpha regardless of how many blockers Sakazuki or Luffy or some of these other decks will put up. So Zoro is still very, very nice. However, the caveat to him is while he actually performs well against most of the format, he has a harder time against yellow, and yellow is still a very popular color. Katakuri, it really depends on who has the better momentum because both decks can high roll pretty well into each other. However, against Enel, the situation that you're trying to create where you are looking at 0 life and waiting on the Diablo, or you have the Diablo in hand and you see the 0 life, Enel does not allow that window to open naturally. They will keep regenerating that last life, and you have to really, really push in order to get to that same window of victory. The other thing is that unlike other decks that will start playing 4, 5 and higher drops, Zoro stays pretty low to the ground, and that makes it so that every single destruction card that Enel has works. If they play Gadatsu, it's almost always live. If they play El Thor and you trigger that from life, it's smoking something. Thunderbolt, it's always smoking something. Every time they play a Yamato, not only will they be gaining a life, they will be smoking something off your board. So realistically, Enel just has a lot of problems mechanically for Zoro to deal with, and that is why Zoro is still at the you can still top, but not at highest top 8 chance. But that being said, you see more than half your matches as Sakazuki, you're probably having a positive record, and congratulations, you might have gotten some top cut prizing. So the next one we have is Belletti. I'm gonna put Belletti in the risky business tier. And the reason why I put Belletti here is because no deck in the game really can survive a Belletti high roll. It's just not happening. You get the Kurisu on the field, it's minusing 1,000 from your opponent's leader. You're swinging with 3-4 things that are all 7k. It's unbearable. And that can happen fairly often. The deck is playing 4 of the best cards. It's got triggers. Most of the deck is triggers between the Revolutionary Armies and the yellow cards. Most of the deck are triggers. So cards are coming out of that 4 life. You are playing a lot of cards, and the deck can make some very oppressive boards very quickly. However, one, it does kind of have some trouble against a deck like Enel that can naturally slow down the rate of getting its face beat in. On top of that, it also is going to be subject to its own potential low roll, high roll. If the deck doesn't pop off, the deck feels very mediocre. If the deck does pop off, it can feel oppressive. Across 9 rounds, you really don't want to be in a place where you are rolling the dice over and over and over. However, there is going to be a lot of Sakazuki, and Belletti can put on some pressure that Sakazuki has a lot of trouble dealing with. Being able to play more than 2 bodies a turn, well, 2 or more bodies a turn, but also being able to get bodies from triggers means that a lot of times you're going to be piling on more characters than Sakazuki can effectively deal with unless you brick and your life is not good. So that's going to be in the risky business tier. The next deck is Enel. Now, Enel is weird for me because I want to put Enel in the highest chance to top 8, and I also kind of want to put Enel on the top of you can top. I think Enel really is on the top of you can still top. I don't think it's insanely top 8 because I think that a Sakazuki that's had enough reps can effectively deal with a lot of the things that Enel can put out. A lot of Enel decks are only teching 1 or so Enel rushers, and so a lot of things come out, do their come into play effects, and then Sakazuki can remove them. And until you hit the late game, Sakazuki doesn't even have to really blink to remove these cards. So it starts getting a little weird. I do think there's a sizable gap between you can still top and, you know, just the rest of them. But I do have to say that Enel naturally struggles against things like Purple Luffy because without a lot of destruction that can hit its bomb cards, Purple Luffy is able to set up and do it comfortably. So I do think that now that I said that, Enel probably is at the very top of you can still top because it's just effectively not able to die easily. It always gets to his late game, and much like Sakazuki, it does the same thing every single game. The only difference is that Enel doesn't really have a high roll or a low roll. Consistently, it is able to just do the same thing over and over again, get to its Katakuri Yamato plays. It's got its 7-drop big moms and whatnot. Whereas Sakazuki, yes, it can perform consistently, but Sakazuki does have those games where your opponent just can't keep a single body on board. You were stacking your things, you were looping your things, you were always with 2 blockers and multiple threats. It's actually just very, very, very strong. So I think Enel, while it is consistent, it doesn't have that little edge. I think Sakazuki does have the edge once people practice and tech correctly. The next deck we have here is Queen. I'm gonna put Queen in risky business. Actually, you know what? It's either in risky business or it's at the top of sleeve at your own risk. I think Queen is probably sleeve at your own risk. If it was 2 weeks ago, I would say that Queen was at the bottom of risky business. But because it is now, and I think Sakazuki is going to have a boost in play, I'm going to put sleeve at your own risk because the main thing is that Queen does need that big drop on board. It just needs it, and that's one of the things that it really does revolve around. And while Yamato can't be removed by a fellow yellow deck, like if you face another yellow deck, you're going to be kind of goated. It's actually going to be able to stick that and use its effect over and over again. But if you face Sakazuki, they will just destabilize you every single turn unless they break. And that's going to be a lot to deal with as a Queen player. Also, Zoro can have kind of an edge when it has a sizable, you know, like a good hand that's not slow, not clunky. It can really put the pressure on Queen in an uncomfortable way. So I say sleeve at your own risk. For all I know, you play Queen and you face 4 Enels, 2 Katakuris, 1 Sakazuki, then you face Enel somehow again, the top Enel, and then you come out with a positive record. But I do think that Queen is going to be incredibly matchup dependent. Next is Nami. I am putting her right into the sleeve at your own risk tier. I'm going to put her above Queen though. So Nami is very, 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 very cool now. I think it's the rogue deck to beat. However, Nami is at a very large disadvantage when it comes to the time rolls. If you guys know, one of the recent national events had a Nami that made it quite far in the event, only to lose in time due to having less cards in deck than a Sakazuki player. And that's by mechanics. the nature of the deck. You're going to have lower cards in hand. There's not, or in deck, there's nothing you can do about that, and that's just unfortunate. A lot of people still kind of play One Piece a little slow, a little too slow in my opinion for how straightforward the game is, and that could put you in a world of hurt playing Nami, where you naturally have to put yourself into a sudden death moment if you go into time. So I do put Nami at this tier. That being said, it's a deck that does not play the same game as anybody else. It interacts with itself really and not the opponent. So for the most part, I think Nami can be a really cool road pick. Just understand that time is very hard to prove. It's very hard to prove that somebody's slow playing, especially when you're not at a feature match or at a top table where there's going to be a floor judge just hovering. It's very hard to prove that somebody is playing you for time, and Nami can particularly just be subject to this. So now we're gonna go to Katakuri. I think Katakuri is in the you can still top, and I'm actually gonna put it here. Actually here, I think, because I do think that Zoro can still pressure it. I think that Katakuri does well enough into Sakazuki. I think Katakuri does well enough into Enel. You really do have to see what you draw, what you actually pair up against. Katakuri has an incredible high roll, possibly the best high roll in the game, but it can also have some really clunky hands where you're trying to let your triggers do the work because you're not playing anything for a couple turns. Access to the best 10 drop in the game, but it really depends because Katakuri is also matchup dependent. You could play a Katakuri deck and face 3 mirrors and lose all 3 die rolls and just have an X3 record. There's a lot of variance that goes into Katakuris. Not only do you have to see the right matchups, you have to draw well, and winning the die roll is super important because of the way this deck is set up curve-wise. You want to be on an even curve. So because of that, I will put him in the you can still top tier. I do think he's a very good deck. I think he really doesn't have any bad matchups, but I also think that he has so much more variance than Sakazuki, so I can't really put him in the highest top 8 chance. Next, we got Law. I am going to put Law at... He's either at the bottom of Sleeve at Your Own Risk, or he's at the top of Remember You Paid to Be Here. Actually, you know what? Because Sakazuki just doubled in stocks, he definitely has to be at the Remember You Paid to Be Here tier, because you just can't hope that Sakazuki only sees 1 or less Rob Lucci's. You just can't go into there and set yourself up like that. That's just asking to be hurt. So I do think that you have to play this as it is. You have to just kind of look at the meta and realize that it is just not his time to shine. Not only are you going to have a weird moment with Sakazuki, while Law also has a pretty good matchup into Enel, I've also seen a lot of I've seen a couple of games where Enel's triggers just start waxing like just the board of a Law player. It's very unfortunate. So I think Law still has juice, and if it doesn't see enough Sakazukis, you maybe squeak by, but I just think that Sakazuki is going to saturate this format harder than it ever has due to the previous, national level tournaments that we've seen pop off so far. I just don't think it's good. And then next you have Whitebeard. Now, Whitebeard is definitely interesting because Whitebeard has a lot of big bodies still, access to a lot of rushers in red. I do think Whitebeard can play very, very well. However, Whitebeard has a lot more competition nowadays. Sakazuki will get rid of the bodies that don't have rush. He'll get rid of the bodies that do have rush, and it might set up too many blockers for Whitebeard to bypass. Enel can particularly hold on, set up, if it plays defensively, if it plays its Santis out, it could potentially set up a little bit of a cushion that it has it outlasting Whitebeard, because once Yamato start landing, they're not leaving the field, and you are essentially going to be able to start pressuring Whitebeard with these big bodies while you refuse to die. Belletti can be very rough for Whitebeard to deal with at times. Like I said, a Whitebeard or a Belletti high roll is a Belletti high roll, but setting you down just to 5 with Karasu can potentially put you on kind of a snowball effect downhill. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that can actually interact not well with Whitebeard. Of course, Sakazuki puts up a lot of blockers, can remove stuff. Even Zoro can line up some shots sometimes. If you can put the pressure on early, or just let them you don't want to let them go down in life, because then you'll naturally allow them to amass a board. But even Zoro can have its shots once they're at 0 life, and the Diables or the Rush Luffy start flowing. So I do think that Whitebeard is surprisingly going to be on risky business. I think that Whitebeard can do work. I just don't think that he is stable enough against all these. So this is my definitive US tier list for nationals coming up in a week. Let me know if you agree or disagree with these choices. I do want to know your opinion. Let me know in the comments. I'll respond to all of them, of course. And yeah, we're gonna move on to the Patreon appreciation page. But thank you guys for sticking. A lot of personal stuff has happened in the past week, and I've been trying to get a hold of that, especially before going to Card Fest. But I am very happy to be here. Later today, we will be streaming, or tonight we'll be streaming the Dragon Ball Super Fusion World Beta. So I hope you guys join me for that. See how it's going to be. Maybe if you're interested, maybe if you already know you're locked in, but just join me. I'll be on tonight. I'll probably start streaming right after it downloads, and so you can probably expect me on hopefully around 9:30. Fingers crossed the servers aren't going to just blow up. But yeah, that's that. So we're going to move on to the Patreon appreciation, and we'll tie out the video. All right, guys, welcome back to the Patreon appreciation segment. Thank you for the members that go the extra mile to support the channel and the brand. I appreciate it. Over here on the Patreon, I try to put up articles that are a little too long to get into in video format. It's been a wild month, especially with Card Fest coming up, which I will be, like I said, commentating for Battlestar Saga. So we've been a little lacking, but we will get right back on that into 2024 with not only Dragon Ball Super Fusion World, yeah, articles, but One Piece as well. I meant to reverse that, but they're both going to be showcased here. Now I want to give a special thanks to the Realm of Extras, the Burars, the Brycears, and the Big Daddy Flapjacks. I don't know why it's so hard to talk right now, but thank you guys for going the extra mile, and I will see you guys all in the next video or article later.